Alright guys, let's talk about it. Diablo 4 Season 4, will it save the game? And the reason why I wanted to make this video is there is going to be an upcoming update this week on the game, and it's going to be covering the new changes for specifically Season 4 and the itemization, which is a huge issue with the game. And a lot of people are talking about the subject matter, and here's my thoughts on it. If you guys haven't seen, there's a lot of other content creators talking about, like, for example, this one by Darth Microtransactions, saying that this is the last chance for Diablo 4 to really make a good statement. And there's another one over here by Riker that's titled, Diablo's fate is determined next week. So there's going to be a big update on this new live stream. And what is essentially coming in this new season? So one of the things that they've been talking about for a while is the big amount of just fluff in terms of the affixes on items. In Diablo, it's kind of different than other action RPGs where you'd have like prefixes and then you have suffixes and then you try to craft on the item, where Diablo 4 is kind of just, well, here's 4 stats in the item, you get to reroll 1, have fun. And it's a really underwhelming system, and I think that there could be some heavy development in the crafting department in the game. I mean, heck, Diablo 2 has better crafting systems than Diablo 3, or even after the expansion. All you can really craft is a bunch of set items that you would use for like leveling, and maybe you could use someone like the Awe Guilds, but for the most part, you're not really crafting the item. You kind of just have the materials, and you just spam as much as possible until you see the one that has the ancient, right? And I think Diablo 4 really needs a better crafting system, not only in the department of itemization, but just in general with it being a action RPG that is supposed to be more modern. How come we don't have any crafting in the game? What is the point of white items? What's the point of blue items? They essentially don't have a place in the game. And what the heck are blue glyphs? There are much bigger issues than specifically the itemization, I think, in the game. And a lot of people are talking about that this season is their last season that they're going to be playing the game until maybe the expansion, which will be around Season 6 is what I would estimate the timeline to be, because it's coming out this year. And I'm actually more hopeful for that than really this next season here. And I'll talk a little bit about why. But if you guys don't know, Diablo 4 has a bunch of stats that are essentially the same. It just gives you damage versus some sort of a condition, right? And the problem with this in high-level Diablo, if you are specifically trying to fight like a boss or doing some sort of pinnacle endgame content that would come out, well, the bosses aren't going to be affected by any of the crowd control. So basically you cut all of these like additive damage things in half, because like damage versus frozen, immobilized, the boss is not going to have that condition until you build up that stagger bar, and once you build up that stagger bar, it's affected by all of the debuff conditions, which is a short duration. But some of the better builds in the game, as you guys have seen, will just one-shot the boss anyways. I've dropped build guides. There's lots of build guides that let you just one-shot the boss anyways, so you avoid all of the mechanics of having these sort of conditions on them. But what's even worse is when they move the vulnerable damage as well as the crit strike damage, those values should actually exceed the other values. And the reason why they didn't do that before is because, well, crit strike and vulnerable damage were much better in general. But then when they moved those to the additive category, well, they're actually going to be worse, because in most circumstances, most people will not have the target be able to be 100% crit viable, as in you're not going to be able to apply 100% crit to your character in most builds. You get about 50%. That's why on the glyphs, the crit like numbers on a lot of them will supersede the other value, meaning that if it says crit strike damage, it might give you 15 versus like regular plus to damage would give you 7 or 10%, and that's because they expect you to not always have 100% crit. But when the items were designed in the original state of the game, all of these other things, they don't match up with the correct numbers that they should be giving you. So essentially, you're getting worse values now that we've moved the vulnerable and crit into the generic additive damage bucket, so to speak. And you still have a base amount that you can get in the game, but it doesn't go beyond the amount that your character just normally gets. So that is a huge thing. They even joked about it with damage on Tuesdays, and I think that in terms of the way that the game is designed with so many things with lucky hit, and some people may not understand kind of how the lucky hit proc chance works, and there's some certain cooldowns on certain things that aren't really explained to many players, and I think lucky hit is another thing that should be addressed, although I'm going to keep it real with you guys. I don't think that they're going to be fixing all of these systems in the most recent update that we're going to be getting this following week. And I was looking at just items in general in this game, and so many items are absolutely broken in terms of them being viable. I don't know if any of you guys have tried an Essador's Overflowing Cameo build on the Sorceress or a Scoundrel's Leathers. These items simply do not work, and it would be great to see some additional buffs to some of these unique items. Most of the unique items in this game, especially on the defensive slots, meaning the pants or the chest piece, they're just lacking in the defensive department over here, and that is huge. Even if you have a perfect Scoundrel's Leather, I have a perfect 80% one, and it does not proc the effects. There's so many unique items that simply don't see any viable options. And I'm not saying that they need to be the best in slot for the itemization update, but just some sort of unique way where we can actually play newer things. So even though we're moving all these other damage changes over here, like for example, at the very top, you see where it says damage to enemies affected by trap skills. So if they're moving all of the things into kind of one generic thing like we see over here where this post over here kind of explains, well, we don't need all this extra fluff, right? The thing is that instead of it saying damage to enemies affected by trap skills, it would just say damage to enemies. The item still doesn't have its own identity, really, in terms of being something completely unique. If anyone has actually tried Scoundrel's Leather, you know it doesn't proc as often as it should. What would be a more unique way to play and actually making this item unique for the itemization update to really make this feel like a unique item would be something along the lines of your traps have no cooldowns, but all of your other non-trap skills do 0 damage or deal 90% less damage. Something where we have a completely different build where now we're just going to be a trapper rogue or just some other sort of way to play with a unique item. That should be what a unique item does, is open up the door for another completely brand new build for a new season, because these things came out in Season 2, no one used them. Season 3 came around, they still were bugged and are not working properly, and no one uses them. And that's kind of sad, because someone has to program and design some of these things, and they simply just don't function. And on top of that, like the damage reduction here, which is normally what you would want, well, you only have damage to enemies affected by trap skills, you have damage reduction from enemies affected by trap skills, and then you have extra trap skill damage, and then some small amount of dodge. And dodge has inverse multiplicative stats on it, meaning that the more dodge you get less in terms of like the value. It doesn't just that you have that 5% dodge chance. If you already have dodge chance, it gives you diminishing returns as you get more. And some players just like don't know about this, and this is where the game gets kind of confusing. So here's what I want to mention with like what I want to see in the game. It's sort of a wish list, but it's basically talking about like, is this actually going to be fixing the game? And if they actually want to fix the game, we need a better end game system. There still is lacking in the end game department. And I'm not saying that I want to go ahead and have easier Duriel mats. I'm far beyond over farming Duriel again and again. And what I find very strange with Season 3, it's like, okay, if we want to get the best items, we just go back to farming Duriel, which we've already done and most players are already tired of doing, especially the players that have every single Uber Unique. It is not fun to go do it again and again, season and season again. So they need to really make this Uber Unique farming acquisition just much easier for the majority of the player base. And there should be some sort of point to a clan. I don't know why that this was posted a long time ago, got a bunch of upvotes, and we still don't have a clan system in the game that makes sense. Like, what is the point of a clan? We can't like really interact. There's no clan events. There's no like, oh, we're doing a raid, we need clan members. And while I did play Diablo Immortal, it was kind of annoying to have like to be in a clan to do certain things. At least it gives clans some sort of value. There's a point to them, right? Another thing is that I would really like to see a party finder. I think there's a lot more things than just itemization, and like I said, this is kind of my wish list part. So I'd really like to see a party finder for, let's say, doing Duriel. Although, like I said, I'm already way beyond tired of doing Duriel anymore. Like, I don't want to do that thing anymore. And I want to say that they should really make it so, like, these Resplendent Sparks, they're like, okay, guys, we hear you. It's too hard to get the Uber Uniques. Instead of requiring 5, you only need 4 now. And that's still not enough. Even if it only required, like, 2. Majority of players will not be able to have a good progression to trying to get all of the Uber Uniques that they want on their character, because it's not like you just want one Uber Unique. Usually you want like 2 to 3, depending on your build. You may need more or less. But for the most part, I think a party finder would be great for players that are like, oh, I just want to play with some other players, because even though Diablo 4 is supposed to be this giant MMO, it feels kind of empty for a lot of players. Like, I myself as a streamer, we have like a clan and we can all play together, especially when I'm live streaming. I'm like, hey guys, I'm going to be running this. Anyone want to join? And I'll just invite people and we can get a full party instantly. But I know that's not the normal experience. Like, if I say, hey, anyone got Duriel mats? I want to do some Duriel for a while. There's someone in the chat that will say, hey dude, I've got a bunch of mats, let's go run it. And this makes it much easier for some content creators, but I definitely understand from the other side of things, because I've played other MMOs, and when you're not in a clan or in a group, sometimes doing certain forms of content, to go and find and meet people on Discords is not as smooth as it would be to just have a party finder in the game. I think that this is something that we really need to see. Another thing that I want to see is an actual form of a seasonal content that actually gives rewards that are viable. This goes kind of time and time again mentioning Duriel is not what I consider endgame pinnacle fun content to do past Season 2. Like, Season 2 was brand new, cool. Season 3, we need to move on to new forms of content that do give us the best rewards. So this is a picture of Path of Exile. It was one of their Trial of Ancestor screenshots. And basically what this is, it was a system where you would have to build like kind of an army, and you would fight someone else's army, and you would also get to play as your character. It almost kind of looks like a chessboard, and you would position your units in a certain way, and then they would kind of do an auto battler. This is a brand new system, and I want to see more new systems in Diablo 4 versus, all right, guys, we got, instead of, you know, nightmare dungeons, we got vaults. What is a vault? Well, it's a dungeon that you go into, and then, well, we put a bunch of traps inside that already existed in the game. If they were brand new traps, sure, I mean, it's a little bit different, but for the most part, it's a nightmare dungeon, right? We get the new gauntlet. What is it? You go in this area, and it's basically like a dungeon. Like, I want new gameplay mechanics that require... I know it sounds almost rude what I'm saying. Like, I want something that requires brain activity, not just like, okay, we go in, we just fight. Like, I want something that requires a player to kind of make decisions and actually think about what they want to actually do. Kind of like where itemization goes in terms of, you know, will Season 4 save Diablo? Even if they made, like, all of these things like damage was slowed, stun, and they just moved all this into one, sure, it makes things easier and more consistent, and that's still a step in the right direction, but it doesn't really make the player think. It's like, okay, well, I just get damage, and then I'm going to get, like, you know, crit chance attack speed. Okay, cool, I got the 3 trifecta, right? Or crit chance or vulnerable, whatever you need on your character. I think there could be a little bit more creativity in the itemization. Maybe they're going to add things that don't exist, and that would be awesome. That's what I would love to see. But the new system mechanic, and I'm talking about, like, let's say vaults, or let's say the vampire era, right? So in the system over here, this was Path of Exile, by the way. In the new gameplay mechanic, you can get some of the best items in the game, and I would really like to have seen vaults award the best reward. Sure, you can randomly get a uber unique off of doing vaults, but that's just like really, really rare, and it's kind of unattainable by most players, and you're better off just farming Duriel anyways. So what I would like to see is the new form of content. Whatever they come up with a new idea, it has to actually yield the uber uniques, because otherwise, well, okay, I don't want to engage in the new mechanic when I'm in the endgame, because the new endgame mechanic is pointless because I cannot get the uber uniques, which is the best items in the game. So I think this needs to yield the best rewards in the game. Not saying that this is the only way to get them, but if it is, that's fine, because it's the new seasonal content. It's going away anyways. But in order to make the players feel engaged and want to do vaults or whatever form of new endgame content that they come up with, it needs to have the potential to drop the best results. And I would also like to see newer bosses. I don't want to fight Tomb Lord for the 500,000th time. Or even if they bring out other bosses, whether that is bringing Ashtaroth back, because, you know, they kind of been bringing some of the campaign bosses back. And I want brand new endgame bosses to go ahead and conquer. That's one thing that I think Diablo is missing from other action RPGs is, like, when I look at Path of Exile and my whole goal is to actually play the new league, if there's a new boss, I want to conquer that brand new boss. And I want that new boss to be challenging. When we got the new bosses in Season 3, they felt way, way too easy. You could fight them way too early. I think they need to be reserved for the endgame, and they need to be dropping those uber uniques or sparks more consistently, so we have a desire to actually farm them. Like, at this point, what is the point of farming Uber Lilith? What is the point of even doing Uber Lilith if you've already done it? Nothing. Because it doesn't yield any good results. And while if they were to yield good results, like, I'm not saying that I should be able to go into Uber Lilith and just get an Uber unique every single time. There needs to maybe be a progression towards it, like getting certain, like, you know, fragments, which is the same thing as PoE, or like Duriel, where you have to get all these mats, but they have to yield good results proportional to the difficulty. Like, Uber Lilith is way, way, way harder than most of the bosses in the game, but it doesn't drop anything, so it's kind of almost pointless. So I would really like to see some sort of, you know, good thing at the end of the day for doing that boss. Another thing that I saw that was really good in another game, Path of Exile, is that they have these races, and you can actually create your own unique if you win the race. And I think this would be a really good addition to Diablo, whether that's designing the next legendary aspect or uber unique for maybe the first person to hit level 100, or let's say in the gauntlet, like the, you know, top rankings for all of the, you know, couple weeks in between the seasons. They look at the numbers and they determine whoever had the highest score, you know, they add it up or something, or who's ever been the highest. It would it would add a little bit more to the game, and I think that this would be awesome to see some sort of race, a desire to go ahead and push for the rank 1 in not only the gauntlet, but maybe the first to level 100. This would be an awesome addition. And another thing that I think would be really cool is kind of have some sort of community events. Like this would be kind of a community event too, where like they have like, you know, a race to whoever can get to level 100 first or whatever. But also, for those players that may not be, you know, super into the competitive side of things, maybe they could have like the most unique build of the season, build of the month, and then they can again offer that player, let's say, platinum in-game currency to just have these little events that I think would be really good for the community. One thing would be like the most unique build in the game, and it doesn't have to be, you know, something that just deletes Sigil 100 content, but just one of the most crazy and cool ideas to incorporate some sort of combo for a cool build that can just maybe just do open world level 100 content, because that's pretty easy to achieve via anyone. And on top of that, we could see maybe some cool ideas, and then that person would get some sort of unique design off of whatever they made for the build. Again, community things would definitely be fun to keep people interested in the game beyond playing, let's say, just the meta builds. Or they could even take it a step further and do certain things like the coolest dressed character, like in terms of like transmog, you could submit it, and the coolest looking character, they would have people maybe vote on it, and then that person would either get in-game platinum or be able to design a cool new you know, outfit for the, you know, the item shop, or some sort of battle pass you know, acquisition. That'd be cool too. So this is where I want to go into, like, where I want to talk more about the leaks from Vessel of Hatred, basically. But at the end of the day, for me, in terms of the next season being like the doomed or saved, or like this is the last chance, here's my thoughts on it. For me personally, I don't feel like the next season, even if they make itemization really, really awesome and we get the best, like, you know, sort of roles, what are we supposed to do with this? I would like to see World Tier 5, which was actually already leaked before. Not necessarily for Season 4, though. Just probably, my guess is the expansion or later in another season. But with all this extra power that we're getting, what are we supposed to do? Go back and fight Duriel? We need some form of like actual, again, endgame content that I think we really would like to see. And with Vessel of Hatred, this is what I'm most hopeful for in the game, is I'm much more hopeful for when the expansion pack drops, Diablo 4 will be saved. It's going to be fixed over here, is what I kind of feel like what would be more exciting for me personally. And while looking at these files, by the way, are actually from the servers. They were like updating a bunch of files for the game, so more than likely they are already testing the expansion for some sort of players. But over here we can see that there is a PvP arena. This is one area where I felt like Diablo 4 was really lacking, is some sort of endgame activity for us to continuously do. There could be clan battles for PvP. You could battle over certain territories that can have higher chances for uniques, so your clan actually has a purpose for, you know, playing together with your clan, or some sort of incentivization for people to actually engage in PvP, because if you've played in the PvP areas, there are lots of times where there are 0 players. You cannot actually complete some of the, you know, seasonal, like, quest lines because there's no one to actually PvP, which is unfortunate. But there's a lot of other things in here. There's going to be a bunch of mercenaries. There's obviously going to be a new class. And I think that that is what is going to, I guess, save Diablo for me personally, is the expansion pack. But to expect all these awesome changes that I'm mentioning and my wish list to come out with the next season, that's probably a little bit too hopeful. But at the end of the day, I'm still grateful that it is always steps in the right direction. While it's not as fast as I would like, at the end of the day, if they get it within the time the expansion pack comes out, then we can continuously play a lot more, because I've been exploring other games like Last Epoch, heck, even going back and playing Overwatch and Fortnite has been a little bit more enjoyable for me versus, again, looking at, I gotta go farm Duriel for 1,000 runs to get all the stuff that I want. That is not what I consider fun, so that's at least my 2 cents on it. I'm curious to know how you guys feel about anything that I mentioned. Do you guys feel like Season 4, if they make itemization awesome, is that going to be changing the game and your opinions on the game? For me, there's so much more that they need to fix, like so many pointless things in the game. Obos are basically pointless in the game because you get 925s from other forms of content. And on top of that, like, what are white items? What are blue items? What's the point of blue glyphs? There's so many things in this game. Mutterlock chest, there are so many other things that I think need to be fixed before Diablo is fixed and saved. But that's my thoughts. Let me know yours down below. If you enjoyed the video, though, drop a like on it. If you're new here, hit subscribe, turn the bell, because we got another really great action RPG coming out this year that I'm excited to share with you guys when the time is right. But I'll catch you guys in the next video. Take care. Peace out.